Welcome to www.happynumbers.org. This is part 2 of finding what percent one number is of another. In part 1, we had problems that looked like this. 6 is what percent of 12? And we knew we just made the fraction, we reduced it to lowest terms, this would be 1/2. Then we changed the fraction into the percent, and in this case we could multiply by 100, and that would be 50, and so we wind up with 50%. And that's a very simple skill set, and so is this the type of problem we're going to do now. We're going to look at a problem like this. 28 is what percent of 24? Well, here the top part of our fraction is bigger than the bottom, so we're going to wind up with an improper fraction, but we work it exactly the same. Pardon me. We reduce the fraction to its lowest name. So here I think we can divide both sides by 4. 4 goes into 28 7 times. 4 goes into 24 6 times. And now I have an improper fraction, but I know that I have two ways I can solve this. I can multiply by 100, or I can divide the bottom into the top. Since 6 doesn't go evenly into 100, I'm going to use the division method. Okay, let's put our decimal point here. Now, 6 goes into 7 one time. 1 times 6 is 6. Subtract, I get 1 and bring down to 0. 6 will go into 10 one time. 1 times 6 is 6. Subtract, I get 4, bring down to 0. I'm going on a slant here. 6 goes into 40 6 times. 6 times 6 is 36. Subtract, bring down to 0. And I can see that this is just going to go on 6s because I'll keep getting 40. So I can stop here. Well, now I've changed my improper fraction into a decimal, and now I'm going to change the decimal to the percent. And I know if I'm going from D to P, I go 2 places. So I move 2 places, 1, 2, and I have 116 6/10%. So again, pretty simple skill set here. Let's just review the process. We had it set up so that, let me just erase this here. We just reduced to lowest terms. We got the fraction 7/6, then we changed the fraction into a percent. All right, let's take another one. Actually, I'm going to put one up for you to do, because this is a pretty simple skill set, and I'm pretty sure you've gotten a handle on it. Let's try, what is 40 is what percent of 16? Put the DVD on pause, work the problem, and then turn it back on again. Good, let's take a look. Well, we make our fraction 40/16. Now we want to reduce it to its lowest name. I think we can divide by 8. 8 goes into 40 5 times. 8 goes into 16 2 times. Well, I've changed it now to a fraction, an improper fraction in its lowest name. And now I have to change the fraction to a percent. Since 2 goes evenly into 100, I'm going to use the multiplying by 100 method. 2 goes into 2 one time, 2 goes into 100. Whenever you divide something by 2, you really divide it in half, so half of 100 is 50. Now I multiply. 5 times 50 is 250 over 1, which would be 250%. So 40 is 250% of 16. Well, I'm going to give you another one. Let's take a look at what 150 is what percent of 90. Put your video on pause and work the problem and turn it back on again. Okay, let's take a look. 150 over 90. Now we know we can just cross these zeros out. So we have 15 over 9. And we can divide both of these by 3. 3 goes into 15 5 times. 3 goes into 9 3 times. So now I have reduced it down to 150 90ths, reduces down to the improper fraction 5/3. And now I can divide 5 by 3. 3 will go into 5 one time. 1 times 3 is 3. And subtract, I get 2 and bring down a 0. 3 will go into 28 times. Oh, my bad. 8 is too big. 3 will go into 26 times. 6 times 3 is 18. Bring down a 2. 0. 3 will go into 26 times. 18. 2. Bring down a 0. And I know that it's just going to constantly be 6, 6, 6, 6. So I'll stop here. So I've changed the fraction, 5/3, into a decimal fraction. And now I know if I'm going to go from decimal to percent, from D to P, I move 2 places. So I get 166 6/10%. Good. Let's give you one more. Let's try this one. My bad. 105 is what percent of 35? Put your video on pause, work this problem, and then turn it on again. Well, let's work it together. 105 over 35. Well, now, there's a lot of ways we can reduce this, but I think 3 times 35 is 105. Let's see if that's so. 3 times 5 is 15. Carry the 1. 3 times 3 is 9, and 1 is 10. Yes, so we can divide by 35. I know my 35 times tables, that's why. 35 goes into 105 3 times. 35 goes into that 1 time. So we have the whole number 3. Now we know there's a decimal place here. And we have to change this to a percent, so we have to move 2 places. 1, 2, so to be here. And we don't put it there. So this would be 300%. 300%. Good. I want to show you one more problem. A little tricky. In fact, we'll work it together. If I said 19 is what percent of 19? Well, we could go 19 over 19, which gives us 1 whole, and we know there's a decimal here. We'd have to go 2 places, so it would be 100%. So anytime you have the numbers here are the same, like 48 is what percent of 48? Well, if they're the same, the fraction is going to be 48 over 48, which we know is equal to 1, and then we know that's 100%. Well, excellent. Well, that's the skill set then. That's parts 1 and 2, finding what percent one number is of another. Very simple skill set. You create a fraction, you reduce the fraction to its lowest name, and then you change the fraction into a percent. Thank you very much.